beginnings of Shanrae. Claudia's girls. Shanrae Price is one of 3 of Claudia's girls. We were these little 2 chubby little girls that my mom would take around New York, all over New York, the East Coast, and we would sing. My mother started training my sisters and myself at age 1 and 2, and because my mother is a singer herself, she's a quite established singer. She used to sing with a lot of gospel greats from New York, such as Timothy Wright, Johnny McClurkin, and then we're a part of the Church of God in Christ Pentecostal denomination. In the national, we would always sing with like the Clark sisters and Maddie Moss Clark, the Winans, and different people like that. So my mother trained me and my sister Kelly from little children on up. She would take us around singing all up and down New York, Brooklyn, the Bronx, upstate New York, Newport, Rhode Island. We would go to Boston. And by the time we were 15 years old, my sister and I, the Price sisters, we would be packing out Shrine theaters. People would be paying to hear us sing. And this also was a plus because when we got hired, he knew who we were. He knew our name. He knew our mother, Claudia. As a matter of fact, he even worked with our mother years before. So these are some of the little early years memories of Shanrae Price.
Love of the people, he gave his life for the love of the people. He gave all he had. More could he give to us. Than his love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. Whosoever believeth on him what more could he give? Than his love.
Moment number 1 was back in 1992 when I was asked to sing background for Mr. George Michael himself. George Michael, Wham, Jitterbug, all of that. He was doing a tour and he was traveling to the United States because, you know, he was from London. And he was doing a huge concert at Madison Square Garden and he wanted a 100-voice gospel choir. But at the time, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, preparing to go to Georgia State. So I get a phone call from a director that I used to work with by the name of Daryl Douglas. And he calls me down to Atlanta. He asked, he said, I need you to come back home because I have to get 100 of the best voices that I know to form a choir so we can sing background for George Michael on his tour. And so I declined. I told him no because I was actually preparing to start college, Georgia State. And so he kept calling and I finally said, well, let me just see what I can do. So I wound up calling the bursar's office in Georgia State and I spoke to a lady there and I told her the opportunity that was, presenting itself to me. And so the lady said, you go to New York, go sing for George Michael. She said, come back. She said, and I will hold your spot in your classes and you can start when you get back. She said, it's still be the beginning of the semester and you won't miss out on much. So go. And so I called back to Daryl Douglas and told him I'm coming back home for this. And it was amazing working with George Michael himself. He was very tangible. He was so friendly. He was talented. Oh my gosh, that man could sing. And we enjoyed that time with Mr. Michael singing Freedom and I Will Be Your Father Figure. Those 2 amazing songs of his. And my career just took off from there. Started working with Mariah Carey immediately after that. She asked could she borrow that same 100-voice choir for the 1992 Grammy Awards. Went into rehearsals with her, the choir, and during a lunch break, my sister and I, we didn't realize that they were providing lunch at the time, so we didn't go. We just stayed in the room where we were rehearsing and we were just fiddling around near the piano and just singing and cutting up. And then this redheaded dude walked in. he looked real familiar, and he overheard my sister and I singing. We were singing like some Andre Crouch songs and different things, and he looked over at us and said, y'all are too young to know this type of music, the Hawkins and Andre Crouch. And so we both looked at each other and laughed and said, not if you Claude's daughter is. So he said, Claude. He said, are you referring to Gloria Price? And we said, yeah, how do you know our mother? He said, because I used to sing with your mother with a choir years ago, the Butch Haywood singers. He said, are y'all the Price sisters? And we said, yeah. He said, oh my gosh. So he started playing some music and we started singing. We wound up singing the Clock Sister song, I Expect a Miracle Every Day. That song. And he just said, keep singing, keep singing. And then next thing we knew, Mariah Carey jumped out from behind this really huge speaker. And Kelly stopped and looked at her. She said, was you back there the whole time? And she said, yes, I love this song. And so Kelly said, if you wanted to hear us sing, then you should have just came right out with it. And Mariah just laughed and said, what is your names? And so we told her who we were. And Darryl Cole from CNC Music Factory, that's who he was. He said, these are the Price sisters. He said, I've known them since they were babies. I know their mother. He said, I used to sing with their mother. And he talked about the Butch Haywood choir. And he said, these girls are amazing. So she said, let's sing. So we started singing some more church songs. Next thing we know, Mr. Randy Hoffman, who was her manager at the time, walked in. He heard us. He said, keep singing, went back out and brought in Mr. Tommy Mottola. Well, we didn't know who Tommy Mottola was at the time, but he was the president of Sony Music. And he overheard us singing. He said, can I get your telephone number? We gave him our telephone number. He said, I'll be calling you all within the next week. He said, we want to hire you all to be Mariah's background vocalist. And we didn't believe him until we got that phone call. And the rest is history. So after being hired with Mariah, it was on. Oh my God, the Price sisters were in high demand. So we were working with Mariah and working and building her sound with her, and we're getting phone calls, and we had to be kind of strategic with what we were doing. So I'm getting phone calls from CNC Music Factory, Gloria Estefan, and Tanya Blount at the time, and it was just mind-blowing demand that the Price sisters were in at the time, but we still had to be strategic because we were Mariah Carey's background vocalist, so we wanted to be respectful with the sound, with her sound and everything, and not giving it out too much. I started being asked to tour. I did a tour with P-Diddy, and that tour was the greatest tour. Unfortunately, it was right after Biggie died. But that tour was amazing, and I had to kind of replace my sister Kelly Price on there because Kelly's album had just came out, Soul of a Woman. And then Faith Evans was on tour as well for herself, so she wasn't able to be on this Bad Boy tour. So I was hired out to replace both Faith Evans and my sister Kelly. And so I had to lead out I'll Be Missing You. I had to do all of the overlays and singing that my sister did on the Bad Boy albums and all of that. Plus I was over the teaching the background vocalist, so I had to keep them in rehearsals and make sure everything was up and up. And that was an amazing tour. Usher, Jay-Z, Little Kim, Foxy Brown, The Lox. It was Carl Thomas, Total, the group Total. It was everybody that was huge. That was like one of the greatest tours that I did outside of with Mariah. Touring with Mariah was just amazing. Going to Italy, Japan. Our tour was with Luther Vandross, Alita Adams. Oh my God, it was amazing. Going to London, doing the Top of the Pops, and overseas. The good thing about overseas is that the background vocalists, our name was just as great as Mariah, so they knew Mariah Carey, but they also revered the Price sisters. So whenever Mariah did her interviews, the Price sisters, Kelly and I, we had to be interviewed as well, because overseas, they love all of the artists. And so life just really soared after Mariah.
I forgot we didn't do some. This is Shanrae.
Hi, Shanrae.
Hi, and Kelly Price.
Hi. The Price sisters.
Wonderful, yeah. The Price sisters, also known as the Price sisters. And my two wonderful backup singers.
I believe in the power
and I never ever doubt. Every minute, every hour, I believe in myself, 'cause I know I get my help from the power in the sky. I believe. She was a friend of mine. She left with my man. She lied, cheated, and took all I had. She was a friend of mine. She used what she knew. She lied, cheated, and left me confused. So who is Shanrae now? I'm on these tours and I'm just traveling. And during my entire career, newly married, and I'm pregnant my whole career at this time. So I'm having baby after baby after baby. And, but everything seems to be going so amazing. But at this point, I start, realizing that I'm really missing out on raising my children. The Price sisters were offered a record deal at the time, and but there was some things that had to be done in the process. Like I had to lose all of the weight from having my children. That wasn't a problem because they had hired like the top-notch fitness guru at the time to work with me with that and everything. But looking at everything from someone else's perspective, they'd be like, "You're sitting on the world. What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I had to come to a conclusion, and it just kept bothering me. Am I going to gain everything that's before me and then lose my family? My last baby was less than a year old. I was getting phone calls because the baby was starting to talk when I left. My aunt, who was helping take care of my children while I was on tour, she kept calling and saying that I'm a little concerned because the baby isn't talking. She used to talk a lot, and now she's just quiet. And I had to sit back and think and say, you know what? No, I need to go home. I need to go home because my daughter, it was too much of a shock for my kids with me being gone long term. And I mean, I had great caregivers along with my husband, but it's nothing like mom. Nothing like mom to raise your children. So when I say that was a tough decision, but I'm so grateful, almost 30 years later, I'm so grateful that I made the decision to pause, retire, and raise my children. I didn't want to lose my children, especially now with everything that's going on in society. And, nobody can raise your children like you can raise your kids. So, yeah, I went from touring the world and singing with all of the top artists to pausing and coming back home, raising my family. I trained my children, my husband and I trained my kids the way that I was trained. So our children are musically inclined as well. I knew that no one could do this like I could, like my husband and I could raise our family together. I am so grateful that I didn't gain everything and then wind up losing my children and losing my family. So that's who Shanrae is now. All of my good days, how to weigh my bad days, and I won't complain. Sometimes my head hangs low,
he said it's coming to pass. Oh yeah, it's coming to pass. God's word, it's true. And if you believe it, then stand on it. Yes. 'Cause if he said it, yeah, it's coming, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I believe it. Yeah.
With everything that's going on today, it was still going on back then. I remember being in Holland overseas, and I was in a McDonald's, and I was standing in line to order some French fries or something. And so a man walked into the McDonald's and actually pushed me. And when I turned around, he said, "You people are last here." And I grabbed my stomach. He didn't know that I was pregnant at the time. And so when he saw that I was pregnant, he was like, "Oh, I didn't know she was pregnant." And so the police were called. He was arrested, and it was, a whole big ordeal. It was controlled. But even experiencing some racial indifferences overseas, it was eye-opening. And then we still experience some racial indifferences over here in the United States back in the 90s. I remember doing several shows, television shows. We had to kind of stay in our dressing rooms because maybe the people at the time, they really were not that comfortable with our race. And then we were allowed to come out at the time to sing, and then we would go back and get our stuff and leave. So I'm from New York. There was a big situation that happened in Howard Beach. That's kind of in Brooklyn, between Brooklyn and Queens. And there was a young ethnic man who was lynched back then. And so right now, it's social media. We're able to see the injustice because the world is seeing it. And so that's the plus with all of this. I'm just grateful that I was convicted to do. I was convicted at the time to pause, raise my kids. Now my grown folk, I call them my grown folk, they're millennials now. They have a strong foundation. They're not perfect, but they do make better decisions because they really do stand on the upbringing that my husband and I gave them. And it makes things a little more comfortable for me to actually come out and step back out in a role as an artist right now. And so back in 2005, I started getting phone calls. People were starting to ask, where have I been? Why have I not resurfaced in so many years? And I started getting interviews. And so I dropped my first single as an artist, not a background vocalist, but as an upfront artist, 2006. And then I just figured, whatever. But I kept getting phone calls. And so my husband and I, we work together hand in hand. He's my producer, and I write and I arrange, and we do everything together. So we started working together in our lab, is what we call it. We started working together in our studio, and we put together a 13-song album. It's called Long Time Coming. It is a Christian gospel inspirational type album. Me reinventing myself now in the 2020s and hopefully the 2030s and 2040s and 50s. It's just been a great venture. What I love about now is social media. We didn't have that, but trust me, if we did, Shanrae Price would be a household name. So this was this decision. I'm back out, y'all.
How many times must I forgive? Trying to move on from the past, but deep down inside, I know I have to leave you because there'll never be a past. It seems to me like it's all a planned pattern. You hurt me, then you keep messing up, and then you run back to me because you know it's my weakness, my see your tears and hear your fears. I'd run back to you and drown in your tears. Whoa. that you and I were never meant to be. It took some time for me to see that my love for you won't make you do right by me. So there's no mistake, and I won't be taking no more from you. Yes, I really know why. Yeah. Oh, 'cause God knows I tried. Oh, I really know why. I won't take your crying no more. Really meant it, then you wouldn't hurt me no more. No more. I never thought that I'd never leave you, so you kept right on deceiving me, and I won't let you keep on getting over on me. I tried. Hey, I really know why. Yeah. God knows I tried. I really know why. Yeah. Oh, 'cause God knows I tried. I really know why. Yeah. God knows I tried. I really know why. Yeah.
Moment number 2 is when I started receiving nominations for my album Long Time Coming and the song that introduced the album No Boundaries. With me becoming out as an indie artist, I'm now learning the ins and outs of the industry from the artist standpoint, the do's and don'ts from the artist standpoint, the importance of your music charting. And I started getting all of these nominations, and I started receiving awards, the Praise Factor Awards, the Radio and Records Awards. My music started getting recognized. To me, that's like, wow. After all of these years, taking a pause, raising my family from a spiritual standpoint, because I am a strong Christian-based believer, I know that God, He told me it was my time to come back out. Although I was like, I'm good. I don't have to, I'm good. You know, I started looking at my age, and of course I'm a plus size woman. So I started looking at my frame, and then I started looking at all of the mainstream artists like the Beyoncés and different ones. And I'm like, oh God, this is something totally different. But the demands kept coming, and people kept saying, yeah, but your talent, and we need to hear it. That's what pushed me, just to hear how people received my music and saying that we've been waiting a long time to hear from you. To me, that was my big moment. Like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna do this. I love this. I love music. I know this is what I was created for. I'm grateful my children are grown and they're independent, and I'm still young, and thank God my talent is still here and still strong, and I am ready. So that was my big second moment, the demand for my music.
Hello. Life is what it is. But how it affects me and how it changes my world, that is up to me. So I choose my perceptions because they are the only thing I have truly complete control over. Yes, my perceptions can cause me to lose my mind in a paranoid frenzy or bring me a level of peace that surpasses all understanding. I choose peace. Life throws me pleasure and pain and obstacles and darkness so unfathomable that I am tempted to curl up into a ball and leave this earth in an instant. And as I am praying, begging God to just take me now, to just let me go, to just release this pain, he reminds me that I have a choice. Fear and defeat and helplessness and hate, it's up to me to embrace these things. To embrace hate, I have too much to live for to go down that road. So I pick myself up, I dust off the despair, and I keep moving forward. It's not always easy and it's not always fair, but it's not supposed to be. So I keep moving forward. The cards I am dealt are mine, nonetheless mine to embrace. Mine to embrace, to learn from, to grow, to shape me into all of the beauty I was designed to become. So I keep moving forward.
Come on, clap your hands, everybody that's listening. And thank you, Dr. Pam, for those beautiful words that you just gave us. This is an old song, but the words are so true. How many of y'all know ain't no stopping us now? Yes, come on, clap your hands, everybody. Yes. Hey, yes, there ain't no stopping us now. Yes. There's been so many things that's held us down, but now it looks like things are finally coming around. I know we've got a long way to go, and where we'll end up, I don't know. But when we let nothing pull around, we're gonna put ourselves together and we're gonna polish up our act. If you ever been held back before, I know you refuse to be held down anymore. Stand in your way. Yes. To every word I say, every word. Come on, everybody. Ain't no stopping us now. Come on, yes. Yes. Ain't no stopping us now. We've got the groove. That's right. Ain't no stopping us now. Yes. We're on the move. Yeah. Ain't no stopping us now. We've got the groove. Yeah. Come on, everybody. I know we had a rough start at 2020, but we still have a half a year to go. And I want y'all to think about the words of this song. Ain't nothing stopping us. Some things may come to try to deter us, but nothing is going to stop us. I'm a firm believer that the best is yet to come. I'm standing on it and I'm walking in it. The best is yet to come. If y'all believe that, come on, clap your hands. Give us the likes and the hearts. And sing this song with us. Ain't no stopping us now. Hey, let nothing stand in your way. I want you to listen to every word I say, every word I say.
Tiffany, coming at you straight, no chaser, real topics, real concerns, real people, every Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. I am with my girl, Shanrae Price, with her new single, I Tried. As you just heard, she's had several moments of great opportunities, several moments of God opening doors for success and for favor. And I'm just so excited about that. And I want to encourage you today that we all have our own personal moments where God has opened doors for us to be able to live out our dreams, to be able to live out our ambitions, and to be successful at all of our endeavors. And so I just want to let you know that, like Shanrae, you can accomplish anything you set your mind to, because everywhere that you go is exactly where God has placed you. It's where he's predestined you to be. There's a Greek word called proorizo, and it is translated to mean in English, pre-established boundaries. Everyone has places they can and cannot go in life. And so based on whatever your gift is, based on whatever it is that you know you've been commissioned and called to do, God has set parameters around your life, not only to keep you from going beyond certain limits, but also to protect you. And I'm just so honored and grateful to be connected to so many great people like Shanrae, so many others, and so many of you that are listening to the show. So be encouraged today in knowing that anything that you set your mind and heart to, you can achieve.
Don't stop us. Hey, don't stop it. Yeah. Hey. Say ain't no stop. Ain't no stopping. Hey. No stopping. No stopping us. Hey. No stopping. Ain't no stopping us now. Whatever you need. What?